It's day 2, song challenge for August. I'm excited, you guys. I have been kind of cranking a little bit on this song. Today I want 16 to 32 bars of your sound development, your sound palette. That's really what you're still designing. You want to get these sounds to sound incredible together before you start, composing your masterpiece, right? We want these palettes to be something that you really work on. I find that the biggest thing people lack that don't understand music production, modern production, how to make a 70s sound, 80s sound, a 2022 sound, orchestral sounds, etc. Trap sounds, right? Traps, drums from modern day production. They don't get the fact that you should be spending a lot of your time on sounds, sound design, sound development, really shaping the sounds and sculpting them to make them work together in the same world. And that's why day 1 and 2 are so intense on just sound design. And that's what I'm trying to show you guys in these first couple days. So if that's not clear, please ask questions, okay? If you have any questions whatsoever, like if you're like, yo, what are we doing day 1, day 2? I can easily write 8 bars of music. I can easily write 16 bars of music. You're missing the fucking point. You don't get it. You're not getting it. Stop. Stop making chord progressions. Stop throwing drums together, okay? That's not the point of day 1, 2, and 3. All right, we are trying to get you guys to get on that level where you can sound design. You can get into a synth. You can manipulate the textures. You can get those drum sounds and the samples that you're choosing, whether you're playing a guitar, plugging in a guitar, a bass, whatever. You want these worlds to come together. That's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to write right now, okay? So that being said, you should always keep in mind what you're going to be writing about. Okay, so you know it's kind of a contradiction. I get it. Like don't write all this stuff. Don't go and make a big composition right now. I'm warning you. Do not get stuck in your composition right now. Don't get stuck in your loop, making the chord progression, the bass, and stacking all these sounds together. Only worry about the sounds that you're making and how they're working together in a world. So sound design, sound design, sound design. That's what we're trying to do. But all the time, no matter what, when you're producing, you should always be keeping melodies, lyric ideas in mind, concepts, stories, your life, what you're going to write about. What are you talking about? What is the song about? Like, what gets you energized right now? Can you tell a story from your past, from high school, from your biggest breakup? Can you tell a story? That's what we really want to do. But we're really focusing on sound design. These sounds, they're going to make mixing a lot easier. They're going to make your arrangement a lot easier. They're going to make your production, your writing, your melodies, they're going to make everything so much easier because you thought about the sounds very, very much and you shaped the sounds from the beginning. And that's what we're doing in day 2 and even day 3. We're just going to continue to make your sounds really work together. So I get it. You guys can write and throw stuff together. Who can't? A 6-year-old can get in here and throw loops together, okay? I don't want you guys to focus on throwing loops together or throwing sounds together. I want you to really develop your sounds, your textures, what drums are working together, your kick drum, your snare drum, your hi-hats, the sounds, the textures that you're going to use in your composition, in your track, okay? Use references. Go into Spotify and find your favorite songs and go, how did they get that guitar sound? How did they get that drum sound? What am I missing, right? Pick your sounds. Okay, so right now I've kind of thrown my sounds together and I've been developing them and they're different than what you even heard yesterday, right? So the bass patch, I've gone in and I've really tweaked this thing, right? I've messed around with the EQ and the curve of the EQ because I'm trying to set up a sound design that's going to work with the drums. I've muted the loop completely and I've programmed my own drums using different samples that I've pulled in, right? So I'm going to show you this, and I'm going to show you really what we're focusing on, and we're focusing on sound design, okay? So if you guys have questions along the way, please ask them. The first thing's going to be pick the right sounds. So let's just play what I got here, just so you can hear these sounds together and the textures together. Okay, cool. So, hopefully you understand, like, this is a very simple progression, but I'm not here trying to write up progression right now. I'm trying to get my sounds to work together. So right away for me, like my ear, I'm like, okay, these sounds are cool. I love this sound. I love this snare because it's like a gated snare. I'm playing it really short. And then there's another snare here. So I'll just go through these sounds one by one so you can kind of hear how they're working together. And then I'm going to show you how to kind of make these work better. So cool. So that's kind of like the sound design of my bass and my drums. And the reason why I've spent so much time on just the kick, snare, and the bass line is because that's my template, okay? I can literally write vocals to that right now. I've already been humming melodies. I already have ideas and concepts for it. And I really think that this is the whole point, right? Day 1, day 2, day 3, like as you go through this, you need to tweak your sounds. You need to get your sound design really, really solid so that every time you add a sound, you know exactly why you're adding that sound. It's fitting right into your template, right into your palette, and you're making a record, okay? From the beginning. We're not doing demos. We're not, oh, here's my piano, and then here's my drummer in Logic, and then here's my loop that I pulled in. No. Spend time on this shit. That's how we get to records, okay? So you also, if you're working with a vocalist or something, you give them something that's not like very exciting, they're going to be like, I don't want to write to this shit, right? So this is what I had before, which wasn't very exciting. I didn't want to write to it. Another thing about what I didn't like about that loop and what I was doing with the sound design is it didn't fit what I started out to make. I started out, I wanted to make something modern pop with drum and bass, EDM kind of feels. That does not feel like that. That feels like old school, like it almost feels a little bit like 2000s, right? This feels more modern, and when I put a vocal on top of that, you know, like when I go into like a breathy kind of cool thing, you know, it's gonna sound super modern. All right, so that's what I want. Okay, so now how do I kind of like tweak these sounds and get them to fit better? One thing I don't like about this is that there's too much top end on the kick, and it sounds too like pinny and too like 2005, right? Just kind of has like that pinned out clink, clink, like dubstep kick drum, right? And I'm like, that's not really what I'm going for. So let me turn this off. This is the EQ. All I've done is EQ on the kick drum and let you hear before and after. Right, I hate that top and that t, like that ticky stuff. That just sounds dated to me. It sounds like a dated dubstep kick drum. D, wah 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 wah. You know, like I'm like, nah, fuck that. That's lame as shit to me. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to like take out that top end. That's what I did. I pinned out a little bit of 1K, and then I'm giving more punch and more girth in the 62. Okay, that's it. Okay, from there, I kind of want to make this a little more distorted and a little bit more intense. You know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a compressor, expander, you know, I could use whatever. I could use all sorts of things to do this. You could use saturators, you know, anything that's going to kind of give it some edge and give it some distortion, some harmonics is the best way to put it. So let's actually just go to like soft tube harmonics, okay? And I'm just showing you guys, like, make your drums glue with your bass, make the sounds really fucking cool and fun right now, because these are the starting points of your track. So spend time on it now. This is not mixing. This is sound design. I'm trying to get my sounds to work together and blend into a world that I think that's a modern sound. That's what I'm going for. Now, if you're going for 70s, make your drums sound 70s. Pick the right sounds, right? Use tape saturation. Use things to make it sound and feel like 70s, right? Don't just like throw a drummer in and be like, yeah, cool. And then I put a compressor on it. Like, that's not what we're doing right now. We're shaping sounds, okay? So here I'm going to use the soft tube harmonics, which I think is really, really cool. I'll go with like a modern type, and we'll take the dynamic and we'll drive it a little bit. And I'll just show you kind of what this is doing. Cool, that sounded really cool to me. Another thing I want to do is I want to shape the bass, the attack of the bass, so that the kick drum can take the attack, okay? Which means I need to mess around with this guy, okay? So I'm just gonna let the kick drum hit and the bass kind of like, it's gonna come right after because it's going doot on the downbeats of the eighth notes. I wanna make sure that it's going whoop, 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 instead of like dit, because I don't want it to compete with those transients of that kick drum. Okay, makes sense. Now I got like a really punchy, tight kind of sound with my kick drum and my bass. Now what I want to do is this snare drum. I really like how it's like it's like different lengths, and that's what gives it more groove, right? Is that I actually went in and open the sampler and I mess with this ADSR, right? So if I open this up, I'll show you what it sounds like compared to what I've got here. So do you see how powerful that is? When you have a sample that's like has like a big 80s gated reverb, it sounds so repetitive that the brain is just going to put it to the back, and it sounds really amateur to me. Like a grrr, grrr, grrr. Like you're like, oh God, that's terrible, right? It's just not fun. It's like, it doesn't sound modern to me. To my ears, it sounds very 80s, and if you're going for a very 80s sound, then do that, but just know that you're limiting your audience a lot, because that snare sound is just gonna like tuck to the back of their minds. So I'm just showing you guys, I'm showing you right now, not mixing. Please don't think that I'm showing you mixing right now. I'm showing you how to design your sounds and how to layer your sounds and how to find sounds that work together and how to make things cool and like experiment. Like this sample, if you heard it, you'd be like, oh, it's this big 80s gated reverb snare drum. Like, yeah, but you can fuck with it so that it's not that, right? So don't think that everything is just exactly how it is. You have so many tools at your disposal. You know, just in Logic, just the stock plugins alone, you can design so many sounds out of something that sounds nothing like it, right? Just tweak and tweak and tweak. Okay, so that snare doesn't have enough punch on its own, right? It's just like very papery. So I added this punch snare. Right? So there's that kind of like mid-range to this snare. One thing I don't like about this snare is how much bright top end there is. So same thing, I can go into the Harmonic Saturator. I can use all sorts of different stuff. On this, I'm just going to throw like a tape plugin on it. I like this, there's this company, what is it? Good Hertz, yeah. And they have this, it's kind of like, let me see here, once I find it. Yeah, Tube. So it's tape and tubes. That's what it is. That's what this is. Tube tape, right? And what you can do, like I just flipped through some, you know, busted sound design, historical guitar and bass amps, all sorts of stuff in here. But what you can do is you can add tube and tape saturation to it. So here you can see 2-track high. It has different kinds of, you know, tape, and this is tubes. So these are all tubes, and this is all tape. Okay, so what you can do here is you can kind of like over bias it, the tube, you can turn up the percentage of the tube, etc. You can turn up the drive, and that's what I'm gonna do on this snare, and I'm gonna try to get it to sit in the mix and kind of like gel together with everything so that these drums start to sound like they're a kit rather than like these samples. You know, you want them to be like, like you want them to be melded together. That's what you're doing with sound design, so that your kit sounds like a kit. Okay. All right, here we go. Checking in, watching the stream while at work. Nice. Love it, dude. That's commitment. Screw a job. I'm just playing. Don't screw a job. I would never quit a job. A job is a blessing, 100%. Yeah, what's up, Brian? How you doing, man? It's good to see you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. What about now? I got Facebook user. Get a different view. The chat looks different than we see it. Yeah. Interesting. I don't know what the hell like is going on with the eCam view and stuff, but yeah, you guys ask questions along the way, okay? I'm just showing you how to kind of like get these things to work together. So again, I don't like the top end of the snare. There's a couple ways to do this. You could use EQ, but you're not going to get the harmonic saturation that like a tube or a tape would give you, which is going to give that thickness, that fatness, and it's also going to roll out the top for you. So let's mess around with it. Do you see how we can EQ with tubes and tape? Before and after, what you're hearing is you're hearing this this kind of sizzle on the top of that sample, which is terrible. Like, that's what I hate about samples. And anybody that makes records will always roll that shit out of samples. It sounds like shit. Okay, the high end in samples, no. Especially in snares. Like, what the hell? Why take up the high end with a snare sample, right? The snare should be like punchy. It should be like something you feel in the chest. It shouldn't be something like taking up your top end, right? Like, maybe hi-hats can be kind of, you know, crispy or whatever, but not a snare drum. So hopefully you can hear that. And you can saturate, like drive the crap out of this, and then you can turn the output down. There should probably be like an automatic makeup gain, I'd imagine. If we go in here, maybe. Yeah, there's a filter as well. So you got all this stuff. You got emphasis, so you can emphasize like certain things. You could tilt the EQ, right? Like that. So if we just tilted it a little bit, you can like make that snare a little darker. Okay, just showing you like that's how we're starting to meld these worlds together. Now like the drums and the bass are starting to really glue together. And you do that with harmonics, you do that with distortion, you do that with saturation, you do that with rolling out tops and like making sure everything has its place, right? Next thing I want to show you is maybe to thicken out the kick drum, because it doesn't feel thick enough and like punchy enough, like it's not hitting hard enough for me. You can send it to like some parallel compression, right? So very simply put, go 100% to a bus and then throw a compressor on there and smash the living hell out of it and then just blend it in, okay? So same thing, I'll use the same kind of company, this Good Hertz stuff, because I really like it. I think they have a great compressor as well. This guy, and there's a Wolf compressor, and this thing's pretty intense. Let's see. It's a new computer, so I don't know if I even know this password. Let's see. Yep, there you go. Okay, so compressor, let's go like into the presets here, and we'll just go to like smash on the comp, you know? Punch and crunch, cool, lots of attacks. See how this is parallel? So when it says parallel, that means that the parallel settings are within this. So you have like, you know, wet dry. So you can add more Wolf, which is really just like bringing up the low level information. But let's just kind of see what this is sounding like. Label your shit, drum comp, P comp is what I usually call it. And then we can kind of like blend this in. Just thicken out the kick drum. So see how that just kind of like thickens it out, makes it a little more punchy, makes it like, whoa, there's that kick drum, you know, that shit's like, whew, that sounded good, that's smacking, right? You can do the same thing with the snare drums. And this also will help kind of like get your drums to glue a little bit more. Just send them all to the same parallel, right? So now I'll just take this, go to bus 1 with these as well, which is the drum P comp, and I can actually send a certain amount to these. I don't have to go 100% on these, right? Let's just see how we can kind of blend that snare in. So yeah, it just makes your drums kind of stand at attention. They come through the speakers a lot harder. Like they're going to be popping out that shit, right? So all of a sudden you're like, whoa, the drums are like in my face, which is dope, right? Like that makes something sound really modern to me. Okay, so, and I'm doing a lot of like this to show you guys more sound design stuff, because I realized last song creation challenge, a lot of the music I was listening to at the end, the songs you guys created, the sound design was super lacking, right? Like, I was like, oh, okay, they got good chords and maybe that's a cool melody, you know? But it was like, the sounds in there are like nothing new. And like, you know, you can hear that you're using loops. You can hear that like it's very basic and stock sounding stuff. So I wanted to give you guys some more game on like just developing sounds more, you know, so that when you get to the mix, you're like, you're fine tuning shit and you're adding that extra spice and just a little extra stereo width and stuff like that, rather than trying to save your record and make it actually sound like a record, right? So right now we have bass. What I'm not liking about the bass, is that it sounds a little too digital, right? Like it's sounding a little too weep, 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 instead of like really drivey, like fuzzy kind of thing is what I'm going for. So let's fuzz that out a little bit. Let's throw this harmonics on this, right? And see what we can get with that. Or we could use a different harmonic plugin, you know, just to give us something. You can use, by the way, you could just use distortion, like overdrive, distortion 2, you got bit crushers, you got phase distortion, you got a bunch of stuff just built into Logic. One little trick I love to use with the Logic stock plugins is go into the EQ, vintage EQ collection, and use like the tube EQ and use these drives, right? These are amazingly musical. So you got like punchy and smooth and silky. So like just this can like really add some coloration to what you're doing. And I'll just show you this on the bass. I'm not EQing at all with this. I'm just pushing a little bit of the drive. If you're sleeping on that shit, you're just sleeping at the wheel. Like you need to step your shit up, and that's why you're here, right? Like hopefully this is helping you. But yeah, just the drive on this guy right here, this Tube Tech, insane. Like insanely colorful and just beautiful. So just something to help you shape and shift sounds, like very, very simple, right? You can add that to electric bass and it's incredible. Like it'll just give you that nice, like nice fuzz or just like a little on top. It's awesome. And it actually like shapes the sound. So it'll like, you know, smooth out shit. Like you don't even need to use the EQ on it at all. You can literally just use that drive, right? So that's something I use all the time. I think this is just an incredible, all these plugins, the Tube EQ, the Neve, the API, all these built into Logic are just, they're super slept on. People just don't use them for some reason. I don't understand why. Like I always see people using this shit. I'm like, why? Why are you using this? Like this is shit compared to those EQs. Like these EQs have character, tone, and so many like shaping possibilities that it's so much more than just EQ. Like just turning this on sounds really good because it's based on the Tube Tech EQ. So something, just give you like a little cheat code there, okay? Now let's throw it through some compression as well because I really want just like some nice tight compression on this one. And for this, I just love like an 1176, or I could use like the Eventide compressor. This one's really dope. Where is it? Omnipressor. This is just like a really tight compressor. I can do like really fast on release, go really kind of, you know, slower on attack. None of this is slow. 100 milliseconds is not slow, right? It's a very fast compressor. And then start to go into compression a little bit. So let's just like do a little light compression on this just to tame it a little bit and give it a little more punch. Okay, so you can see, like, you guys, I've been streaming for 35 minutes. All I've done is, like, start to shape my sounds and glue them together. I'm not sitting here like, yo, I'm going to compose a whole, you know, 3-minute piece right now. Let me lay it all out and arrange it. Like, we're going to get there, but if your sounds suck, your record's going to suck. It's going to be a demo. You're going to get to the end of this and you're going to go, I have a really great song. No, you have a really great demo. And someone's got to go make that a record, and you need to like learn how to make a record. You need to learn how to shape sounds and how to shift things and how to use compressors and EQ and saturation and learn how to use these tools that are built directly into this software that is very, very powerful, okay? Okay, so here's another tip when you're coming up with sounds and you're just trying to get inspired. I like this sound. I think this is dope. But it's got a huge kick drum in it, right? And it's got snares and all that. that's okay. We can just filter out that shit and see if it works in our progression. So we're at 172, so that should drop in perfectly, right? And it's a drum and bass kind of groove. So what we can do is we could drop it in. It's 4 bars. We'll repeat it out, make it 8 bars. So we have like a little loop here. And we can go into this and just pop on an EQ or a filter, and then just filter out all the bottom and all the, you know, where the snare and the kick and everything are. So just go in here and make this pretty steep, 30 dB or so, and just go up to like 1K, 2K area and see if there's anything at the top that we just like that works within our progression and within our bass and stuff. So I do that all the time because sometimes it's really cool. Sometimes you just filter it out and it works really well. So that's really dope. Like I think it's like a really cool sound that gives like some syncopation to the beat, right? So what I might do with a loop like this is there's certain parts that I don't like about it. I don't like when it goes like it goes crazy. So I could chop it up and I can find parts of it that I really like. So see, that kind of like helps it turn around rather than it like doing the same loop over and over. It would just like have a progression sort of thing. You could chop this down even more, right? Like you could chop it into like 2 bars, 1 bar, half a bar, etc., down to samples, like whatever you want to do here. And you could just kind of like mess around with the progression. So I do that all the time with loops. And I think loops are really powerful in that sense. Like this is what I would do with this one. Okay, another tip is to use pitch, right? Like you can pitch things up and down and you can transpose them. So like I can take this loop that once was something completely different and I could turn it into something that really is very much constructed for my song and made to serve my song and that beat and give me something a little bit different, right? So for example, this when you repeat this clink, clink, like that, this beginning, like maybe we want this to go tss, tss. So we just take this and maybe we move this up like a third, right? Or a step or something. I want to add like human velocities and layers. Like even for my kick drum, right? You could see this is the kick pattern. And these kicks are all like solid, the ones that need to be solid, like drum and bass style. But then there's these little pitched up kicks that are like the right? It gives you that pickup. Right, so like it's gonna sound more like a drummer hitting the beater. You know, I grew up on drums, so that's I think like rhythm and that kind of stuff is very important to me. Same thing with these this open 80s kind of snare. You could change the length of the open snare, right? So for example, you could take this and make it short or long, right? And have it hit for as long as you want it to hit, right? So you got 2. Or you have like, so that's going to help your groove. And that's what I've done. I have like different lengths of that opening snare. So that could really make the groove happen a lot better. So if it's going right, there's different timbres and different lengths and different patterns going on throughout my drums. I'm not just going do ka, you know, and the samples are just firing off. Like that's going to be very basic production. That's going to be the shit that makes you sound like an amateur. And it's why a lot of people use the drummer track, right? The reason to use the drummer track, for example, if I go drummer, right, and I make a new drummer track, let's just call it, yeah, percussion, electronic, let's just go alternative or rock. Okay, good place to start. I start a drummer track. the drummer track can give you all that stuff, right? Like you go more complex, a little bit softer, and you could do different stuff, right? Like different styles, and you could turn things on and off. And this is why people use this this drummer track, because it actually is human. They took human drummers and recorded them and then converted them to drummer tracks. Okay, so that's how that works. These grooves were actually played by drummers. So when you have that, you're going to have nuances in length of MIDI notes, velocity of MIDI notes, etc. So for example, if I go in and I say, all right, so let's duplicate this snare track, Command D, and let's just drag this, Option drag this to the MIDI. It converts it to MIDI data, okay? And it's going to be like general MIDI, right? And this is a snare, but look at all the different variations in MIDI, right? So first of all, it's not perfectly on the grid. You can see it's swung because it's like actually played, and they had like actual players come in and do all of these, which is why it's so powerful and why so many people use it. But you can see like even these like are a little swung, but then you can see the different velocities, right? So let's say you know, you had like a drummer track, but then you wanted to drop it into like electronic drums, or maybe you wanted to drop it into let's go into like a contact drummer, right? So you can go into contact and you can use your own drums, and then you can mix those and tailor them to however you want. Meaning, and I'm just showing you this to you guys because I want to keep giving you like as much game as possible as you're producing and sound designing and stuff. So if I go in here and I'm like, yo, I kind of want that like that 70s drummer kind of sound, right? So I go to 70s drummer, and let's open up like a tight kit here. And I can make this like, I could, you know, make sure that this sounds exactly how I want it to sound. So let's say we're doing like a disco sound, disco beat kind of vibe. Disco drum kit. And then I can take this drum pattern, right, which is super rock, but I could pop it into this and it's going to convert it to MIDI. And now I have a completely different kit. And you go, okay, now I got a kick drum. Right, so it's just like a really cool way to get different sounds. And if you're like, yo, I don't like the kits in Logic that are built into Logic, so okay, I want to use my easy drummer kits, or I want to use my contact kits, or I want to use electronic drums, you know what I'm saying? Like samples, you can do all that. And you can program something really, really nice in the drummer track. And then you can move that out, you know, like here, you can just go pop that SoCal kit in, and maybe double click in there and do like whatever you want to do. Like, oh, I like this, and I want to go loud, and I want to go more simple, and I want to play the toms as well. And then it's got fills and all that shit in there, but I just don't like the kit. I don't like the sound of it, and I want this to be electronic. Okay, cool. So all I got to do is drag this up to a MIDI track, and then I can go, okay, I want this, you know, this is the kick, that's the snare, you know what I mean? And then you could take the kick and put it into a sample. Very simply put, like here's the kick pattern, because I really like that kick pattern. I programmed it with the drummer, and I changed everything, and I honed in on the tone and the sound and like the playing. Now I can actually take these and go to, like, for example, my snare, duplicate that track, and just bring up the snare, right? So I think this is the snare here, and this guy's the snare. So we'll just like delete everything else, right? So bring that up there, and then delete everything else, right? So just get rid of the everything else, right? Go bam, bam, bam. And so now I just have the snare pattern that it played in, that I programmed with the drummer, and then I'll put that to middle C because that's where the actual sample is at its core, right? Okay, now I got this in a sample. really good way to program drums and to change things and to layer in samples. And, you know, you guys, a lot of you guys have my like Stolen Love kit, my LA Nights kit that has some great samples in there that I've designed, you know, from the ground up. And you can start to layer in those samples with like a Contact kit or a drummer kit, because these are really kind of basic kits. You know, it sounds cool, but it's just like a rock kit, you know, it's kind of like, it sounds dated. You know, it's like, oh, here's a drummer. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's just not that exciting. So make things really exciting by using that kind of stuff. And let's get back to this little loop. Hey, look, that's a happy accident. I did not plan on that being, that happening. Like, this is really dope. And all that is just the snare drum sample, like, pitched down, which sounds really cool to me. On this C1 note, mainly. So I'll just delete everything else, and maybe I'll mess around with that, because it's kind of a cool vibe, right? Happy accident. I wasn't trying to do that. But it's a really cool groove that I can add to the track and maybe mess around with. So check this out. Now I got this kind of, like, rolling thing. Yeah, I think that shit's super dope, right? So what I want to do with this now is maybe I want to like throw some effects on it. Maybe I want to, you know, sweep out all this stuff at the bottom and find a place for it in the spectrum. You know, another thing I might do is throw like a flanger or phaser on it or something that's going to like kind of give it a little different vibe. But yeah, that's what I'm trying to do right now. I'm just trying to make cool shit. And this is really dope. Like I did not mean for this to happen at all. So let's go into like a instant flanger, right? And let's try to just flange it a little bit. We can even just open up a preset and see what we got. So let's do like any of this stuff. Just flip through it. I mean, that shit's vibey, right? Like, I'm actually really into that. And the reason is because it's not a hi-hat. It's actually a snare just, like, pitched down and, like, really weird. And then just, like, flanged and EQ'd. And it just sounds more modern to me. Like, yeah, it'd just be fun to sing over that. Yeah. All right, what do you got? I learned so much from these live streams. Yeah, that's what I try to do, man, like is get these live streams in every day for you guys, just to make sure that I can kind of show you guys stuff that, you know, that I'm constantly learning as well. You guys got to remember, like, I don't know shit in the grand scheme of things. Like, I'm just sharing with you guys, like, what I know. There's so much to learn all the time. Like, if you ever think you got this and you know what you're doing, you've lost, like, straight up. Like, I always feel like I'm learning something new. What is this? Yeah, I usually have a to tune in late because I teach in the afternoons. Nice. Yeah, so you guys can always, you know, just watch the replay of this. But I really want you to like get the sound idea and the experiment phase down, and listen to records that you really like. You know, listen to stuff that inspires you. Listen to stuff that you go, holy shit, that sounds really cool. How do I get that sound? That's really what you guys should be doing, and trying to manipulate sounds and make them your own. And every time I do something, just so you guys know, when I'm making records, I'm always singing in my head. That's something you should get in the habit of doing, because I used to like make beats. Dude, I have so many beats. I have so many trap beats, hip hop beats, soul beats, pop beats, you know, starts, you know, chords on pianos, etc. just sitting on my hard drive. Because I would start stuff and like be like, oh, this sounds really cool. This sounds really cool. But not have a vocalist in mind, a melody in mind, a story in mind. And those things just sat on my computer. They still are sitting there, right? Like, and I can't use them because I go in and it's like, I start playing them back and I'm like, yo, this sounds so sick. And then I start like humming over it and I'm like, I can't write anything to this. So it just sits there, or maybe I pull a sound from it, or I use the drums from it or something like that. But yeah, I'm always humming and coming up with melodies and ideas as I'm doing this. Like this right now has so much potential for just great, like in-your-face pop vocals, and it can go so many places. I even thought like I'll plug in the electric bass, the Fender, and play like the beginning, and then go into this kind of like, you know, EDM kind of vibe, switch it up. So like the bass line has more of like a, you know, like I can play this same kind of, you know, and then it's just so easy to sing over. It's like da I know you're hearing double and stuff, but like just stuff happens right away, and then your brain is gonna kind of tell you the next pattern. You know what I mean? Da 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 da, and then like you hear the chords and you hear the things that could happen over the bass line and over the melodies and stuff. But before you do any of that, you got to have like sounds and ideas that are like, wow, this is super dope and this is super original and it sounds modern. It sounds like what I want it to do. And then when you plug a microphone in and you start humming over it, you're like, this already sounds really cool. Which will keep you inspired to write the next part, basically. So anyway, you guys, I'm going to get out of here. Hopefully this was really helpful. And if you have any questions further about any of the sound design stuff and what you got to get done for day 2, drop them right here on the live, and I'll try and answer those. Otherwise, you know what to do. Get to work. Peace.